There are moments in professional sports that don't just decide a game, they rewrite history. They expose everything hidden beneath the surface, the insecurities, the rivalries, the years of built-up tension that one single play can detonate in front of millions of watching eyes. Athletes spend their entire lives constructing a reputation, brick by brick, game by game, until one catastrophic second tears the whole structure down. And when that collapse happens on national television, with cameras rolling and millions of phones ready to capture every frame, the fallout doesn't stay inside the arena. It spreads everywhere, instantly, unstoppably. What unfolded in the closing seconds of the latest Clark versus Angel Reese matchup was not just a missed shot, it was the spark that ignited one of the most explosive media firestorms in women's basketball history. A wide-open layup, a buzzer, a laugh, and then pure, uncontrolled chaos that spilled from the court into locker rooms, onto social media, and straight into the studio of the most polarizing analyst in sports television. By the time the dust settled, legal threats were allegedly flying. Stephen A. Smith was delivering one of the most savage takedowns ever broadcast on live TV, and Angel Reese had gone completely silent, refusing to face a single reporter. To understand how one missed layup could trigger all of this, you have to go back to where this story really starts. From the moment these two athletes shared a court, it was clear this was never going to be a simple rivalry. Clark and Angel Reese represent something far bigger than basketball. They are two completely different philosophies about what it means to compete at the highest level, and the collision of those philosophies has been generating heat since their college days. Clark operates like a machine, cold, calculated, almost surgical in the way she dismantles defenses. She pulls up from distances that most professional players wouldn't even attempt in warm-ups, draining shots from logo range with the kind of casual confidence that borders on arrogance, except the numbers back up every single bit of it. There's no theatrics, no performance, just results, stamped into the scoreboard before anyone realizes what happened. Angel Reese is the exact opposite. She plays with fire. She plays loud, emotional, physical, dominant in the paint, working crowds, taunting opponents, wearing swagger like a second skin. She made herself a cultural icon before she was ever a professional athlete, building a following based on personality as much as performance. She is not the type to go quietly. She has never been the type to go quietly. When these two forces collide, it is not just a basketball game. It becomes a referendum. Fans choose sides not just based on who they think plays better basketball, but based on which philosophy they believe in, which identity they connect with, which player represents something true about themselves. That is what makes Clark versus Reese so much bigger than a rivalry. It is a cultural battle being fought on a hardwood court in front of record-breaking television audiences. Both players knew exactly what was at stake walking into that arena. Millions of eyes were locked onto their screens. The national spotlight had never been brighter, and everything, every storyline, every piece of built-up history was about to come crashing down on a single possession in the final seconds of the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter was suffocating. The kind of game where every possession feels like it might be the last, where coaches are burning through timeouts and players are running on pure adrenaline and nerves. The score was deadlocked. Neither team could pull away. Every defensive stop felt monumental. Every offensive mistake felt catastrophic. Then the defensive rotations broke down.
In the chaos of those final agonizing seconds, the basketball bounced free and landed directly in Angel Reese's hands. Not at the three-point line, not in the mid-range, not somewhere that required any level of difficulty or skill beyond the most fundamental action in basketball. She was inches from the rim. No defender between her and the basket, no rim protector rotating over in time, just a wide-open lane and a layup that the most basic player on any recreational court would convert 99 times out of 100. The entire season narrative was sitting right there. The bragging rights, the psychological edge, the ability to look across the court at Caitlin Clark and own that moment in a way no statistic or social media post ever could. She went up for the shot. The arena held its breath. The ball hit the iron awkwardly, clattered uselessly against the rim, and spilled onto the floor as the final buzzer sounded. For a fraction of a second, nobody moved, the kind of stunned silence that only happens when something occurs that the brain genuinely cannot process in real time. Then it hit all at once, a deafening eruption of disbelief, mocking cheers, and the unmistakable sound of a season-defining moment slipping away. But the story didn't end with the missed shot. It was just beginning. Before the broadcast could even cut to commercial, the cameras moved. They panned down the court, searching for reactions, and they found exactly what they were looking for. Standing near the opposing bench, not screaming, not pumping her fists, not even really celebrating in any traditional sense, Caitlin Clark was looking directly in Reese's direction, shaking her head slowly, wearing an unmistakable smirk, and then breaking out into full, uncontrolled laughter. That image traveled around the world in seconds. No trash talk, no hand gesture, no crossing half court to get in anyone's face, just laughter. And somehow, that was more devastating than anything else Clark could have possibly done, because laughter doesn't require effort. Laughter communicates something that words and gestures cannot: pure, effortless dismissal. It said everything about the power dynamic in that moment without Clark uttering a single syllable. Social media ignited instantly. DraftKings reposted the clip with the caption calling it the ultimate rivalry moment. Memes flooded every platform within minutes. The image of Reese on the floor, hands over her head, the look on her face in the instant she knew what she had done, that became the defining visual of the entire game. Sports accounts, fan pages, and media personalities were sharing and resharing the clip on a loop, and the reaction was overwhelming. The internet had made up its mind fast, and it was not gentle about it. What made it particularly brutal was the context. Reese had built her entire public persona around dominance, confidence, and never showing weakness. She had taunted opponents on some of the biggest stages in women's basketball. She had leaned into every viral moment, every piece of drama, every headline that put her at the center of the conversation. The internet remembered all of it. And now the internet was returning everything that had been sent out with interest. Here's where the story gets even more uncomfortable for Reese's supporters, because the missed layup wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a one-time lapse under pressure. When analysts started pulling the data in the hours after the game, what they found painted a picture that went beyond one bad moment.
Among all players in the WNBA who attempt at least 2 shots per game within 5 feet of the basket, layups, floaters, point-blank attempts, the shots that are supposed to be automatic, Reese ranks first in attempts. She is going to the rim constantly, more aggressively than almost anyone else in the league. That part sounds impressive, until you flip to the other column. In field goal percentage from those same close-range attempts, she ranks dead last. Not near the bottom, not in the bottom 5, dead last, 34th out of 34. Narrow it down even further to pure paint scoring, shots taken right at the rim, the layups and gimmies that are the bread and butter of any interior player, and the numbers become genuinely difficult to explain. Out of 75 players logging at least 2 paint attempts per game, Reese sits 73rd. The 2 players finishing below her are a 5'6" guard named Jordan Harrison, a name most analysts admitted they'd never even heard before pulling this data, and Skylar Diggins, who stands 5'9". Think about what that means for a moment. Angel Reese is a 6'3" power forward, one of the most physically imposing players in the league, who built her entire brand on paint dominance and interior toughness, and she is converting close-range shots at a lower rate than guards nearly 8 inches shorter? Contrast that with what Caitlin Clark has been doing. Over her last 11 games, following an injury restriction period, Clark averaged 26 points per game on shooting splits of 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 87% from the free throw line. She routinely pulls up from 35 feet. Her operating radius on offense covers nearly half the court, and she is doing all of it with the level of efficiency that most players dream about. The missed layup was not bad luck. The data was telling this story long before the buzzer sounded. What happened on the court was dramatic enough. What reportedly happened off it pushed this story into completely different territory. Reese did not speak to reporters after the game. She walked off the court, disappeared into the tunnel, and went completely silent, which, for an athlete who had never been shy about commanding the spotlight, said everything about where her headspace was. Reports began circulating within hours, sourced from unnamed backstage witnesses, claiming that the post-game locker room was in complete disarray. These accounts, and it's worth being clear that none of this has been officially confirmed, described a scene of raw, unfiltered emotions spilling over into rage, frustration at the missed shot, humiliation at the public mockery, fury at the viral image of Clark laughing. But the detail that sent shockwaves through sports media was even wilder. Rumors spread, again unverified, sourced from anonymous reports, that discussions in Reese's camp had briefly touched on the idea of potential legal action. The suggestion, as it circulated online, was that some of those around her were so outraged by the public mockery and the avalanche of online ridicule that words like lawsuits and harassment claims were allegedly thrown around in the heat of the moment. The idea of legal consequences stemming from an athlete laughing on a basketball court after a rival missed a layup was something sports media had genuinely never encountered before. It was unprecedented. It was almost impossible to process seriously. But the mere suggestion of it, whether rooted in genuine anger or massively exaggerated in the retelling, was enough to transform the story from a sports moment into a full-blown cultural event. Whether it was the raw emotion of someone pushed to their absolute breaking point, or whether it was internet gossip that spiraled completely out of control, one thing was certain: the narrative had shifted. This was no longer just about a basketball game. It was about egos, accountability, entitlement, and the question of what happens when the persona you've constructed in public gets turned against you in the most public way imaginable. If the missed layup was the spark and the viral laugh was the gasoline, then Stephen A. Smith was the open flame.
The moment the footage, the statistics, the backstage rumors, and the social media firestorm landed in front of him, Smith did not hesitate. He went completely nuclear on live television, delivering a monologue that was so unfiltered, so relentlessly direct, that it immediately became a story of its own. He opened with the ratings, because in professional sports, money and viewership are the only language that matters when you want to make a point that nobody can argue with. The Clark-Reese matchup drew 2.6 million viewers on ABC, a 79% increase over the previous year's comparable game. The WNBA on ESPN networks was averaging 1.3 million viewers across the season. The Clark-Reese game doubled that average by itself. Smith laid out every number methodically, building his case brick by brick. Then he pivoted. He made it abundantly clear that professional sports is not a safe space for fragile egos. He pointed directly at the hypocrisy of an athlete who had spent years building a persona around taunting opponents, working crowds, and never missing an opportunity to assert dominance, suddenly positioning herself as a victim the moment the energy shifted in the other direction. He leaned into the camera with a kind of intensity that only comes from someone who genuinely believes every word they're saying, and he made the argument that there is a price that comes with choosing to be that kind of competitor. His most devastating line was almost laughably simple: you cannot sue your way out of embarrassment, and you cannot litigate your way to victory. He dismantled the narrative that Reese had been treated unfairly, pointing out that Caitlin Clark had endured years of physical targeting on the court, relentless online criticism, and public mockery without ever retreating to the media to play victim or hiding behind legal threats. Clark took every hit, responded by performing at an elite level, and let the scoreboard do the talking. Smith's message to Reese was surgical. Stop obsessing over social media narratives. Stop sending lawyers after laughter. If you want your rival to stop finding your failures funny, there is one solution and one solution only. Get into the gym, lock in your fundamentals, and make the wide-open layup when your team needs it most. His co-host Tori pushed back, making the argument that deserves acknowledgement. Reese is 22 years old, operating under a level of public scrutiny that almost no athlete her age has ever faced. The money came fast, the spotlight came faster, and she is visibly learning some of these lessons in real time in front of the entire world. There was a reasonable case for grace. Smith acknowledged the youth factor but didn't retreat. He pointed out something that Reese's defenders tend to overlook. She is not someone who stumbled accidentally into social media fame. She built it deliberately, exploited it strategically, and used it as a weapon to elevate her brand and her income. That intentionality means you cannot claim ignorance when the same platform turns against you. You understood the game, you played it aggressively, and when the game plays back, you do not get to suddenly act like you didn't know the rules. The reaction to Smith's monologue split the basketball world cleanly down the middle. Clark supporters called it a necessary reality check delivered by someone with the courage to say what most analysts danced around. Reese's defenders argued that the media coverage had become disproportionate, amplifying every mistake, weaponizing every emotional reaction, and feeding a narrative that served the 24-hour content machine far more than it served any honest conversation about women's basketball. Both sides had points worth considering, but neither side could argue with what the scoreboard said. Here is what nobody on either side of this debate can dispute. The dynamic of this rivalry has changed permanently.
Caitlin Clark walked out of that arena with something more valuable than a win. She walked out with a psychological edge, the undeniable, documented, statistically backed proof that when the pressure peaks and the margin for error disappears, she performs and her rival doesn't. The laugh wasn't just a reaction, it was a statement that is going to echo in every future matchup, every locker room conversation, every pre-game preparation session that Reese goes through from this point forward. Angel Reese is now standing at the most important crossroads of her professional career, not the most difficult, the most important, because what she does next will define everything. Does she internalize this, disappear from social media, rebuild her game in silence, and come back sharper and hungrier than anyone expects? Or does she continue leaning into the persona, the drama, the narrative, and risk this moment becoming the defining image of her career rather than just a chapter in it? The answer to that question is one that only she can provide. But make no mistake, the question has been asked, loudly and publicly, in front of millions of people who are not going to forget the answer. What is certain is that this rivalry is not dying down. If anything, the missed layup, the laugh, the alleged backstage chaos, and the Stephen A. Smith eruption have poured so much oxygen onto this fire that it could burn for years. Every future matchup between these two athletes will carry the weight of this moment. Every highlight, every statistic, every post-game interaction will be filtered through the lens of what happened in those closing seconds. Professional sports has always been about more than just the game being played. It is about legacy, about narrative, about the story that gets told long after the final buzzer sounds. Right now, the story being told is that Caitlin Clark is the most composed, most statistically dominant, most mentally unbreakable player in women's basketball, and that the gap between her and her biggest rival is wider than most people were willing to admit before one wide-open layup exposed everything. Whether Angel Reese can rewrite that narrative is the most compelling storyline in sports right now. Not just in women's basketball, in sports, full stop. The court will give her the chance to respond. The question is whether she'll be ready when it does. Did Caitlin Clark's laugh cross the line, or was it the coldest, most calculated competitive move in women's basketball history? And was Stephen A. Smith delivering the truth the league needed, or did the media machine turn a basketball moment into something it was never meant to be? The debate is yours. Drop your thoughts below.